Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Hope you guys had a good weekend. All right, we are still on the audio-only podcast. Man, it's a little more challenging than I thought, kind of getting the system up and running and just getting the whole thing up and running to do basically what I'm doing right now, but staring into a camera and recording it. It's actually not as easy as I thought. I did a couple practice runs and I don't know, man. I looked goofy. Like I had like crazy eyes. I had like crazy eye killer from Curb Your Enthusiasm. I tried using a teleprompter, and I'm not going to lie. I'm not good with the teleprompter. I'm good more just ad-libbing. And you know actually what I think it is? I'm actually a pretty good public speaker. And one of the things that I've always prided myself on, which ironically I learned from Barack Obama, not even going to lie, and that is making eye contact with like the entire audience. So like when you're speaking in front of a crowd, you know, a lot of people will just kind of maybe stare in one direction or they'll just focus one way. But obviously, you know, you make everybody feel much more inclusive when you're sort of scanning the audience, you know, looking deep, looking shallow. Whoa, that's funny. Looking deep, looking shallow, looking to the back, looking to the front. Anyway, the problem I'm running into right now is when I try to record this, you know, looking into the camera. I don't know. I just haven't gotten comfortable yet. But anyway, okay, enough about that. Hope you guys had a good weekend. All right, I am going to talk about something that is going to probably surprise most of you, and because it honestly surprised me. So last week or maybe 10 days ago, Candace Owens interviewed Nick Fuentes on her show. And obviously, I think you guys know who Candace Owens is. Obviously, you know I've been really a huge fan of hers. I really have. And I've really thought she sort of has complete integrity on pretty much everything up until this. This is funny. I guess this just is, I mean, it's calling a spade for sure, but it's also making you realize that everybody, you know, I should say that nobody is potentially removed from, I don't know, from just not having integrity on every single thing. And so let me explain what happened. So Nick Fuentes, you know, I've brought him up a few times on the podcast. I call him a kid because he's only 26, but he is unbelievably savvy. I think I've complimented him several times on the podcast. He's had various takes on JD Mass. That's my buddy who managed Nelly. JD, my man. JD Vance. And then a few others that I've really liked, and I've played a few on various episodes. You can go to, actually, you know, let me leverage the deep shallow dive search. I seriously do love that. Okay, so I've talked about Nick Fuentes twice. One was his basically very, very astute analysis on JD Vance, which I totally have agreed with. I mean, again, I'm not saying I don't like JD Vance. What I'm saying is he came out of nowhere and he just like all of a sudden became the senator of Ohio, and then all of a sudden became the vice president. That stuff is weird to me. It really is, and you have to question it. And then the second piece, if you guys remember, it was episode number 320. But basically, Nick did like this super deep dive into Trump and the situation in Iran and how it relates to Israel, and basically how if push comes to shove, Trump is not going to be able to, let's say, not take decisive action against Iran if a false flag event happened and some crazy catastrophe happened and it was pinned on, the regime in Iran or things like that. He was basically saying, even though you think Trump is anti-war, or that's what he said prior to becoming president, he's not going to be able to be strong enough against the powers that be. Okay, anyway, I think this Nick kid is incredibly sharp. Here's the problem with him. And again, it's not a problem. It's just this is his perspective and it's highly controversial. But he is also I guess you'd say he's a white nationalist racist, he says that about himself. So I think it's okay that I say it. But more than anything, I think he just advocates for, he advocates for white people the way that other people advocate for their kind. And, this is like real talk and this is like coming from a non-white person. So I think I'm allowed to say this. And that is, I do understand where they're coming from. Now, I think there's a huge difference between somebody that says, hey, just because we're the majority and we're white, why is it that we always have to basically play second fiddle? Now, again, man, this is such a controversial topic. But again, to try and rise to 30,000 feet and look down, I see where he's coming from. Now, what I don't even want to say don't like about Nick, but what I obviously don't agree with him is if he, and I don't even know if he said this, he probably has, but if he or anyone who falls into the white nationalist, segment, which obviously I'm not in that segment, if any of them, like, I'm not down with the stuff where they're like, you shouldn't mix races, you shouldn't marry outside of your race. Like, black guy shouldn't marry a white girl, white woman shouldn't marry a black girl, Hispanic shouldn't marry a white guy, all of that stuff. That stuff I think is ridiculous. Like, I think that stuff is just totally ridiculous. And I think that at the end of the day, I really do. My grounding statement is that people are people, human beings are human beings, and I could care less what color you are, what gender you are, what sexual preference you have, what ethnicity you have, what nationality you have, what religion you have. I could care less. I seriously, I really could care less. Like, that stuff plays a zero part in how I judge somebody. It really doesn't. And again, I have to imagine most of you are the same, or hopefully most of you are the same. So anyway, where Nick kind of gets very controversial is the white nationalism stuff. Okay, that's the setup. So what happened was he went on Candace Owens and, they paywalled the interview. And man, it was a bad interview. It was the interview everybody wanted, or the collaboration everybody wanted, because again, Nick is very intelligent. I think Candace is very intelligent. And I will say this, they both have very similar views on what's going on in Gaza and all that. So there were millions of people that were like super excited about this. And so I listened to the interview over the weekend, and it was like, and by the way, so Nick is 26 years old. I think Candace is 36 years old. She's either 35 or 36. And right away, like almost from relatively the beginning, man, she kind of was attacking him. I thought it was going to be more really intellectual about the history of whether it's the Gaza, Palestine, Israel stuff, or Russia, Ukraine, or really Trump. Because here's the other interesting thing about Nick and Candace, because I think they're both the same. They both used to be absolutely enormous Trump supporters, like major Trumpers. And now neither one really is. So in my mind, I was like, okay, this is going to be cool. This is going to be some real, some real nuanced politics. And it was none of that. It was basically what it felt like. And my buddy Brandon Church, not Brandon Critian, my other Brandon, which I've talked about before, but Brandon Church, he actually said a very interesting thing on something I posted. He said, I think that Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, this is him talking, he said he thinks that Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson are getting grouped with Nick Fuentes because they have similar views on the Gaza situation, and it's causing them maybe potential issues with sponsors or whomever. And so they're trying to distance themselves from Nick Fuentes. They're not trying to distance themselves from their collective similar views on Gaza, but they're trying to distance themselves from Nick Fuentes so that, let's say, the Zionist faction cannot group the three of them together. And I actually think that's exactly it, because Candace was just, I mean, she was bad. I'm not even going to lie. She was really bad. She came off, to me, who's like a big, fan, kind of. I mean, I don't want to call myself a fan. I don't like to say that. I'm not a fanboy. But you guys know how much I've liked her and complimented her. She came off unbelievably unlikable. Like, I genuinely did not like that version of her. And I found myself being like, dude, I do not like this. And more than anything, and I'll play you a clip in a second, it just showed me that, wow, everybody is capable of everything. And so here's somebody that I really held in very high regard. And again, I'm not saying I don't hold her in high regard, but I know now she's capable of the other side. And again, I mean, I probably should have known this, but it's the first time I've seen it in action, to where, let's say that was the first piece of Candace Owens content I had ever consumed, this interview with Nick Fuentes. I would have been like, man, this chick sucks. I would totally unlikable. I probably never would have listened to her again. And I would have been like, oh my God, what a hit piece. That was terrible. Isn't that crazy? I mean, seriously, isn't that crazy? With all the positive things I've said about Candace Owens for the past year. Okay, let me play you this clip. This might actually bring a little bit of perspective to it.
Sometimes when I see the things that you say, I do think, okay, he doesn't take into account family. Like, it's just Nick. Nick is in his own world, which can be, I think, a quite selfish perspective, which is fine. That's what you're saying. You like being selfish is another way to say what you just said. I like being selfish and I don't want to give of myself to somebody else.
I also think there's something selfless involved, which is to say,
let me jump in really quick. So remember, this kid is 26 years old and Candace is a decade older than him. She's got 4 kids. She's obviously much more established in that aspect. And she's kind of lecturing him on the fact that he's saying, I don't want to get married right now because I want to be selfish. Now, again, he's 26 years old and he doesn't bring up his age as a retort, but I feel like all he had to do is bring up his age as the retort and be like, Candace, I'm 26 years old. You're a decade older than me. Maybe when I'm 30, I'll think about settling down, but I enjoy being single right now. I'm 26. But here's his response. And again, I like his response. All I'm saying is he probably could have diffused it or at least added to it by saying, hey, I'm only 26 years old.
I could go and start a family and drag them into a world of mine, which is pretty chaotic. I mean, is this really the kind of a lifestyle?
Okay, so the other thing to know about Nick Fuentes is he started talking this 8 years ago when he was 18. And because of just, how controversial the stuff that he talked about was, the kid is banned on practically every platform. He is not able to open up bank accounts. They kicked him off of PayPal. They basically like I think he was on a do not fly list for a long time. I mean, they really, really, really shut his life down in the traditional sense of all the things you and I take for granted.
If I'm banned on everything and I can't make a living, I'm banned from banking, I'm banned from credit card processing, I'm getting doxxed, people are showing up to my house trying to kill me, things like that. I also don't appreciate the lecture. You don't know me, so I know you're married, I know you're older than me, but you don't know me, you don't know my life, you don't know my situation. I don't think you're in a position to give me advice, especially as a woman, honestly.
Okay, so like here's a perfect example of where I'm like, Nick, dude, okay, I don't agree with this, and this is where, or this is the shit you say that is just too much, and it makes you unlikable. Basically he's saying, I don't appreciate your advice, or I don't appreciate the lecture. I think that's totally fair. Again, you're 26. I'm 26. I don't appreciate the lecture. I'm not at that stage in my life yet. Boom, end it right there. Instead, he takes it to where I don't appreciate the lecture, and especially coming from a woman. Like, okay, that's the stuff that, again, I'm not down with that. And if it was me interviewing him, I would have pushed back on I would have agreed with the 26 part. I would have pushed back on, it's not like you can't get amazing advice from women, from men, from whomever.
I don't think women, this is something in the right wing. We say we're anti-feminist, and then women go around telling men what to do who are not their husbands. And, I don't really buy into that ideologically, but that's besides the point. My life has been tumultuous from the very beginning. From the time I turned 18, people were coming for my neck and trying to get me. And I was kicked out of college. And then, once you're branded as an anti-Semite, before it became cool or popular, can't get a job, can't make a living, get banned from PayPal, all this kind of stuff. That's a very difficult environment to try to have a dating life. What do? I go out on Tinder, I go to a bar, and I say, hey, I'm a neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes that the ADL is writing articles about every day. I'm going to start a dating profile on Tinder. People are going to screenshot that, mess with me in all kinds of ways. It's a very difficult predicament, actually, for me, because I took on basically a huge sacrifice at the beginning. And I don't know that you really appreciate that.
I mean, again, calling a spade, I thought he articulated that incredibly well. And man, he started all of this at 18. Can you even comprehend doing what he did at 18? I absolutely can't. Can barely comprehend doing it at this age. And then let alone, the fact that he's only 26 still. And again, Candace, this clip, I'm playing you this clip because it's really the tone of the entire interview. It was a very chastising interview. She was very condescending. She was very argumentative. And it was a huge wasted opportunity at two really smart people whom have really good views or really interesting views. You might not think they're good, and normally are able to articulate those views so well. It was just such a wasted opportunity because it ended up kind of just being like a back and forth sort of argument over stupid shit.
I took on basically a huge sacrifice at the beginning. And I don't know that you really appreciate that enough. I think that you're somebody who, you had a career in politics for as long as I was fighting a battle. You were at Daily Wire with a contract. You're at Turning Point. You're making good money. You're doing book deals. You're part of this thing that I'm criticizing and paying a very heavy price for at a time when no one's saying those things, when it's very unpopular. And it's not to say that I'm a victim, because I did it willingly and I love it and I would do it again. But it is to say that, you and I have lived very different lives. It's easy, I think, for you to say you had your husband, have your kids, you got your ducks in a row, made quite a bit of money, then you discovered the truth.
All right. Again, I mean, another great point. Like Candace Owens has really gone against the grain. I mean, she did with the Black Lives Matter stuff, but in terms of the thing that really has propelled her, it's recently, and it's really going against the Trump administration, and it's going against what Israel is doing in Gaza. And that's where her and Nick are completely aligned, and they're completely similar. And the waste was that they didn't talk about really any of that during the interview. But, again, he's making a good point. He's like, hey, I've been doing this for 8 years. You've been doing it for like 8 months or a little bit longer than that.
And then you went out on a limb. And it's not to say you didn't make sacrifices and it wasn't a risk, and it paid off. You're doing great now, and I congratulate you. But with me, there was no calculation. I mean, I almost want to say I was 17. What's your excuse? I was 17 and I woke up and I went balls to the wall, bucket of ice cold water, as you say. I made a lot of enemies, and maybe that wasn't wise, but I told the truth, and I took on extremely heavy cost for my personal life. It basically has made it so that I can't have a personal life. I don't even have many friends. It's a little more complicated, I think, than maybe you understand.
All right. I know you don't have the entire context of the interview to judge that response, but again, he's right. Here's a guy, and most of you might not even know who he is. So anyway, I'm sorry I've talked so much about this, but it is kind of important. And by the way, it is kind of like a major topic on at least Instagram. I don't know. I think he made a lot of good points in that. I really did. And like I said, I think the entire interview was more of a calculated, somewhat of a, I don't even want to say hit piece, but it was a distancing piece. Candace wanted to distance herself from Nick. She then went on Tucker Carlson, and the two of them wanted to distance themselves from Nick. Maybe I'll play some more a little later in the week. Actually, one thing I might try to do, let's see if I can do this. This might be a good way to get me into the video space. And that is basically do a video breakdown of their entire one hour interview. I might try to do that. But all right. Anyway, so my point is both Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, or I should say both Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, because I haven't talked about Tucker yet. Again, obviously, those are two people that you guys know. Man, I've played a ton of their clips. I've talked about them a lot. I've complimented them a lot. And I've really held them in very high regard. And again, like I said, it's not like I don't like them anymore, but I will say I've seen a different side of the two of them because of this Nick Fuentes situation. And I think that's interesting. I really do. I think that's interesting. And I guess the learning is, man, there's two sides to everybody. Tell me included, I'm sure. Now, I don't think I've shown the other side yet, but who knows? It's probably there. And maybe if push came to shove and I had to do something for survival instincts or whatever, maybe I would do the same thing. I probably would. I'll say that right now. I probably would. And so I don't really know what survival instinct Tucker and Candace are needing by distancing themselves from Nick Fuentes, but obviously there's something, and they are capable of it, and they did it. And so my point of this episode is, I guess, call a spade on everybody, even the people that you like. That's really the only way we can continue to, in many ways, try to just uncover what we think is the truth. And like I said, I think that my biggest realization after watching all that was, wow, everybody's capable of everything. Even the two people I've held in, arguably the highest regard when it comes to geopolitics, although I hold Professor Jeffrey Sachs and Professor John Mearsheimer a little bit higher, because I think those two, I don't know, they're just older and wiser maybe, so that's why. Plus I respect my elders. But anyway, I thought this would be an interesting episode to kind of say, hey, even though I've been all in on Candace and Tucker, there is some kinks in their armor, and that got put on full display with the Nick Fuentes situation. All right, there's that. There's a bigger lesson in that. I'm sure you guys are getting it. Okay, this week, I've got a couple interviews I'm definitely going to release. I interviewed a awesome dietitian. I'll try to get that one out. I also, oh, by the way, I don't know if you guys got a chance to listen to the interview on Friday with Jonathan Randall. He's the Jewish American comedian and activist. Man, that was a really raw and real episode. And that guy is, I mean, talk about putting yourself through the ringer for your beliefs. I mean, he's a Jewish American who is really advocating for humanity and Palestinian rights and paying a very heavy price. He really is paying a very heavy price, both with his family and with his career and really across the board on multiple things. The end of the interview, unfortunately, got cut off. We had a technical glitch and I thought I had solved it properly and we kept going. There were a few minutes left, but the interview came to kind of an abrupt end. And so I do apologize about that, but it is what it is. But that's like a 45, 50-minute interview. If you didn't listen, it's good. It's really good. I mean, Jonathan is he's oh man, I feel bad for that guy. I really do. I feel bad for him in the sense that, man, he is just taking a beating from people that are the closest to him. You know, his own brother doesn't really talk to him. He's got a strained relationship with his dad. A lot of his friends have cut him off, let alone, you know, obviously many people in the Jewish community who don't agree with, you know, the position he takes against Zionism and against Israel, the state of Israel. I think, yeah, the thing about Jonathan to me that really resonates is he loves Judaism and he loves being Jewish and he loves his religion. It's kind of like Elijah Kallenberg, you know, those guys, they're not anti their religion. They're anti the political ideology of the state, you know? So anyway, all right, I will get stuff released. I'm going to figure out this video thing and let's see. Oh, you know what? I will play one more clip. Let me throw Tucker under the bus. No, let me throw Tucker into the mix on this. So this was a clip that got edited actually by Nick and his team because again, Tucker and Candace, they really got visceral with him. So here's a clip from Tucker, and the first part of it is from the interview that he did with Candace Owens, which released on Friday. So this is 4 days ago. And this is him talking to Candace about Nick Fuentes.
And he's attacking my dad as a CIA, his dad's in the CIA or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's no, untrue. Then my father dies and I learn actually, yeah, you know, was involved in that world. I was completely shocked by it. So
it's much more impactful with the video. But again, remember, that was last Friday. That's him talking to Candace and basically saying how Nick Fuentes has been talking about how Tucker Carlson's dad was in the CIA, which, by the way, Tucker Carlson's dad was in the CIA. It's kind of, I mean, I don't want to say it's a secret, but it's something not everybody knows. And in that clip from Friday, literally last Friday, you can clearly hear Tucker admitting or saying, I didn't know my dad was in the CIA until after he died, right? He's clearly saying that. I did not know my dad was in the CIA. Nick Fuentes keeps saying my dad was in the CIA, but I didn't know that until after my dad died. Okay. Now, here is Tucker Carlson in June of 2024. So literally, basically 1 year ago on the Sean Ryan podcast.
And so when I applied to CIA, and I've taken a lot of crap, including from Putin, like, oh, you're from a CIA family. Well, yeah, obviously my father worked in conjunction with CIA. I mean, that's what that is. And I tried to join the CIA, but I'm not being false about it.
So again, that's him on Sean Ryan a year ago, basically admitting my dad, yeah, of course, my dad was in the CIA. I tried to join the CIA. You know, remember Tucker went over and interviewed Putin, gosh, coming on a year ago or 7 months ago or whatever. And so he's like, Putin even busted my balls about saying, oh, you're from a CIA family. So it's a bad look, man. It's a bad look for Tucker Carlson to say last Friday, during the episode with Candace Owens, how ridiculous Nick Fuentes is being by claiming that Tucker Carlson's dad was in the CIA. And also that Tucker Carlson knew that, where he clearly knew that. Come on, give me a break. By the way, give me a break. There's no way Tucker Carlson, who's been in media for 40 years or 30-something years, there's just no way he didn't know his dad was in the CIA. So anyway, all right, man, I guess you learn something new about everybody every day. I thought this would be an interesting episode where even people that you like sometimes can surprise you. So anyway, that's it, everybody. Call a spade, call your parents. Good stuff coming this week, and we'll catch up with you soon.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by Zipix nicotine toothpicks. Zip more, smoke less. Totally satisfying, discreet, and delicious. Zipix nicotine-infused toothpicks are available in 6 great flavors, each containing at least 2 milligrams of nicotine to curb those cravings. Zipix is FDA registered and proudly made in the USA. Use discount code DSD for 10% off your order at zipixtoothpicks.com. Zip more, smoke less, save 10%.